My boyfriend has a childhood friend. They grew up together, closer than siblings. That's how Maurice introduced Elfrida when we first started dating. I believed him. Until Morris's lab mate hinted at something. Rebecca, don't just focus on your project. Come sit with us in the lab more often. We were quite familiar, so I complained, I wish I had the time. You know my supervisor's nickname, don't you? After a while, she replied, Morris's sister comes to the lab every day to see him. Many people are wondering if you two have broken up. Maurice isn't the unfaithful type, and I trust him completely. If it were any other girl, I might have felt a bit jealous, but Elfrida is like his sister. It must just be gossip. Even so, when I happened to be in the area and went to see Maurice, I was a bit surprised. Because Elfrida was indeed there. It was a hot day, and she had ordered ice cream delivery to Morris's lab. Apparently, there was a miscalculation, and they were one short. So she said, Maurice, you'll have to make do and share with me. I stood at the doorway, watching in disbelief as Elfrida held the ice cream to Morris's lips. Maurice was looking at his computer and, seemingly annoyed, turned his face away. I don't like sweets, you know that. Elfrida was about to say something when the lab assistant at the door spotted me and called out, Mrs. Quinton's here. Come in. Maurice immediately turned around. Elfrida's hand trembled, and the ice cream spilled all over him. Maurice, being a neat freak, immediately grabbed at his shirt, shaking it. Can't you be more careful? How annoying. Elfrida suddenly became upset. She turned to leave, throwing back a remark, I was being nice, and you're complaining. I'm going home to tell on you. Morris's face darkened. You've ruined my shirt, and you're the one upset. I intercepted Elfrida, trying to smooth things over. Don't go, don't go. I'll scold him for you, all right? In the end, Elfrida offered to buy Maurice a new shirt to make up for it. We took a taxi to the shopping center. Maurice, tall and long-legged, looked good in everything, but Elfrida had a keen eye. She chattered non-stop, making Maurice try this and that. Feeling bored, I wandered around the store, absent-mindedly checking the price tags. Coming from an ordinary family, such shops were well out of my usual price range. Thank goodness for the strategically placed mirrors in the store. Because at that moment, through the reflection, I saw Elfrida roll her eyes at the back of my head. What kind of expression was that? It seemed to be a mix of contempt, mockery, and a sort of condescending pity. Elfrida slowly withdrew her gaze and walked away. I stood quietly for half a minute before turning back to the fitting room. Maurice stood in front of the mirror, impatiently asking, Elfrida, are you satisfied yet? This shirt finally met with Elfrida's approval. The cashier efficiently wrapped it up. This new arrival isn't on sale. It's £399.99. Do you have a membership card, madam? When I heard the price, my heart skipped a beat. Is it really that expensive? Just a week ago, I had bought Maurice a pair of pajamas for £7.99. I stepped forward and tugged at Maurice's hand, wanting to tell him not to buy it, but Elfrida had already nonchalantly tapped her credit card. We'll take this one. Then she gave Maurice a knowing look. As usual, I buy you clothes, you treat me to dinner. As they walked side by side through the shopping center, a florist approached them. Sir, would you like to buy some roses for your girlfriend? We have a special offer today. Elfrida's lips curled into a smile, looking as if she was about to say yes. I gritted my teeth and stepped forward. Elfrida, if you like them, let me buy them for you. You've given Maurice a gift today, so I'll return the favor on his behalf. Elfrida's hand, which was about to touch the rose petals, retracted. She smiled at me sweetly. Rebecca, dear, I've received so many roses, I'm quite tired of them. Besides, giving flowers always has a meaning. What would it mean for you to give me roses? True, I couldn't give her roses, but could Maurice? That night, I couldn't sleep a wink. I pondered for a long time, wondering about Elfrida's mindset. Was she truly naive, exercising her right as a childhood sister to dote on her brother? Or did she have feelings for Maurice and was trying to sabotage our relationship? The second thought seemed absurd because if Elfrida had wanted to make a move on Maurice, she could have done so years ago. Why wait until now? So it must be the first possibility. I first met Elfrida in Goldsby at the university coffee shop. At that time, Elfrida was studying abroad, while Maurice Quentin remained at the local university. When she returned for the holidays, she discovered that Maurice now had me by his side. Back then, I thought she was a lively and cheerful girl. Though from a wealthy background and inevitably a bit proud, she was still quite charming. However, her welcome gift to me was truly shocking. It was a bracelet from a luxury brand. When I returned to my dormitory, I spent ages searching online, unable to believe that Maurice's sister would casually gift me a piece of jewelry worth 5 figures. I asked Maurice if I should return it. This bracelet was worth more than all the clothes in my wardrobe combined. I thought to myself that I'd probably never wear it. But Maurice didn't make a fuss about it. Keep it. It's nothing compared to what my parents give her. Somehow this conversation reached Elfrida's ears, and she approached me saying, "Rebecca, I actually have a favor to ask. Our professor assigned an essay, and I'm struggling with it. Could you help me research?" I wanted to refuse. "Your school is abroad, the course content is different. I'm afraid I might not do a good job." Elfrida took my hand, swinging it back and forth. "Rebecca, Maurice says you're a top student. I'm sure you can do it. Don't be modest." She actually sent me the research materials and assignment details. It was indeed related to my field of study. But I was still conflicted. If I did it, I feared I might not do it well and be laughed at. If I didn't, I had accepted such an expensive gift from her and felt obligated. In the end, I spent half a month in the library and finally produced an assignment that looked presentable. The week I finally completed Elfrida's assignment, Maurice and Elfrida went on holiday to France. 2 families, 6 people, traveling together. Maurice had asked me beforehand if I wanted to join. I had indeed saved up enough money to cover the travel expenses. But the thought of spending all my savings in 7 days made me wince. So I said, "Just bring me back some souvenirs." Maurice did indeed bring back a box full of snacks and mementos. He would pick up each item and tell me a bit about the local sites and experiences. Telling you about it like this, it's as if you came along with me. The main reason I didn't immediately clarify that I mind Elfrida in Goldsby was because of Maurice's attitude towards her. Maurice and I have been dating for years, and I've met all his mates. He treats Elfrida the same way he treats these male friends. Maurice and I don't have a habit of reporting to each other when we meet friends, but when I ask about Elfrida, he always tells me honestly. I once asked indirectly, "You're such a straight bloke, sometimes even I find you annoying. Why does Elfrida always seek you out? Doesn't she have other friends?" He seemed completely oblivious. She studied abroad for several years, so she's lost touch with her old friends a bit. So, I came up with a plan. Maurice has a mate called Barnaby Fairfax, who was our university classmate. Barnaby posted on Facebook asking for help because his cousin wanted to apply for a postgraduate program. I usually don't bother with Barnaby, but this time, I not only helped his cousin revise his CV and prepare materials, but even personally took him to meet the professor. The cousin's name is Kenneth Holbrook, and he's quite tall. He looks somewhat similar to Barnaby, but their demeanors are completely different. Kenneth's features are finely chiseled and handsome. But when he's not smiling, there's always a hint of gloom in his eyes. Kenneth's undergraduate degree isn't from a top university. Although he won some awards related to his major during his studies and has a solid foundation, the professor's attitude was noticeably cold. Both Barnaby and Kenneth were feeling a bit discouraged. I comforted them. At this stage, it's just about making a good impression on the professor. In the end, it still comes down to grades. Don't worry, I'll contact last year's students to find some materials for Kenneth. Since I helped, Barnaby naturally wanted to repay the favor. So he invited me for dinner, and when he was about to call Maurice, I stopped him. "Maurice is busy lately, don't bother him. Otherwise, he might not finish his data analysis and blame me for wasting his time." Having dinner alone with Barnaby might raise suspicions, but adding his cousin made it different. 1 woman and 2 men, talking about university exams over dinner. How normal does that sound? I deliberately chose a popular restaurant where we had to queue for an hour. By the time we finished eating, it was already 10 o'clock at night. Perhaps because Barnaby was overly friendly, Kenneth seemed even more quiet in contrast. Maurice and I usually call each other every night. By now, he had already called 3 times without an answer. I guess his temper had reached its peak, so I finally picked up and put it on speaker. "Rebecca, where have you been? No one's in the dorm, and you're not answering your phone." Making sure Barnaby and Kenneth could hear, I replied with a slightly coy tone, "What's the matter?" "I'm with Barnaby. He asked me for a favor, so he's treating me to dinner." Maurice seemed to choke for a moment, and after 10 seconds he said, "Where are you?" "I'll come find you." Probably to cover up his earlier awkwardness, when Maurice arrived at the restaurant. He not only tried to fight Barnaby for the bill but failed, he then invited everyone for a few drinks at the bar next door. The 3 men chatted about everything from stock market trends to national affairs. I sat beside them with a smile, occasionally chiming in with a joke, and the atmosphere was quite pleasant. It was very late by the time we got back to the university. Maurice walked me to the dormitory entrance but didn't seem in a hurry to leave. The night air was sultry. He put his arm around my waist and planted a kiss on my cheek. Suddenly seeming a bit annoyed, "Why did you go out with Barnaby without telling me? And your skirt is so short." I knew what Maurice was thinking. A few years ago, before we started dating, Barnaby had inquired if I was single. But Maurice confessed first, so Barnaby gave up the idea. I widened my eyes, pretending not to understand. "Didn't you say you had an experiment to do? Besides, I didn't hide it from you. And it's the middle of summer, look around, which girl isn't wearing a skirt?" Maurice was at a loss for words, but Barnaby is a bloke, and so is his cousin, right? I laughed and pinched his cheek. "Bloke or bird, does it matter? I don't interfere with you and Elfrida. Why are you interfering with me and Barnaby? We've never meddled in each other's affairs." Maurice was speechless, nuzzling my shoulder like a big puppy. "I'm petty, I'm jealous. All right, let's make a deal. From now on, you're not allowed to go out alone with other women, and I won't go out alone with other men." "How's that?" "That's exactly what I wanted to hear." I raised an eyebrow and drawled, "Fine." My little scheme had worked. Maurice and Elfrida hadn't gone out alone again. But my worries didn't disappear, instead, they grew stronger. Elfrida always found ways to make Maurice forget his promises to me. She quickly got a new boyfriend, then broke up with him, and ended up drinking herself into a stupor at a bar late one night. Maurice went to pick her up, and because he was afraid she'd be scolded by her parents if she went home drunk, they went to Maurice's flat off campus. The flat had just been renovated, with only basic appliances. Maurice occasionally stayed there. He had invited me to stay overnight too, and was quite frank about it. "My mom said when she bought this place that it would be our marital home," he told me. The more sincere Maurice was, the more reserved I felt I should be. So I'd only visited a few times, and always during the day. But I never imagined that the first person to spend the night there with Maurice would be Elfrida. And what's more, she was the first to tell me about it. Early in the morning, she sent me an out-of-the-blue WhatsApp message, "Rebecca, the mattress you bought is so comfortable. I want to get one just like it." I was a bit surprised. "What mattress?" "The one in the master bedroom at Maurice's flat where I stayed last night. Maurice said you bought it." I felt anger bubbling up from the soles of my feet. The mattress was indeed one I had bought. I pinched my thigh hard, letting the pain help me regain my composure, then quickly sent Elfrida a voice message. "Sure, I'll give you the sales contact. Mention my name and they'll give you a discount." Elfrida's voice message came right back, "No need, my parents have money. I don't have to pinch pennies like you do when buying a mattress, Rebecca." The biggest insecurity in my relationship with Maurice was the huge gap between our family backgrounds. I pretended not to understand her implication. I held down the record button and replied in a light tone, but with a hint of complaint. "Well, I'm already in the mindset of preparing for marriage and setting up a home, not pinching pennies. But Elfrida, since you don't have a boyfriend right now, I suppose you're not thinking that far ahead." Elfrida didn't reply after that. I turned off my phone, feeling a buzzing in my ears that took a while to subside. So far, Things had developed to the point of touching my bottom line. I admit I have many shortcomings. By worldly standards, I may not be good enough for Maurice. My parents are both factory workers without much education. Meanwhile, Maurice's father is a professor who flies around the world giving lectures, and his mother is a successful businesswoman. Apart from being blessed with a good brain and passable looks, I really don't have much to offer. It's understandable that Elfrida looks down on me. But to give up on Maurice and our relationship just because of his childhood friend's provocation seems a bit too much. Since subtle hints hadn't worked before, this time I needed to be direct. I found Maurice and asked him frankly, "You took Elfrida to stay at your place that night?" Maurice was stunned for a moment. "She told you?" I asked her not to say anything. As if afraid I'd overthink it, he quickly added, "It was too late, so I didn't notify you." Later, we had a few more drinks at home. I fell asleep and didn't wake up until noon. But don't be angry. She slept in the bed, I slept on the sofa. I swear to God, we just drank and talked. I remember the promises I made to you. Now wasn't the time to place blame. I feigned surprise and gave him a light smack. "What are you thinking? How could I suspect anything between you and Elfrida? You've called her sister for 20 years. Can't you comfort her when she's just had a breakup?" Maurice looked even more confused. I spoke earnestly, "What I mean is, your handling of the situation wasn't ideal. Elfrida's family would be more concerned about her safety if she didn't come home that night. You should have taken her to a female friend's house." This was the most rational and considerate response I could come up with. Elfrida was young and naive, Maurice was bound by friendship, so I would be understanding and gracious. It was quite interesting how we all had our own roles to play. From a young age, I've always had the courage to take risks. This boldness led me to meet Maurice Quinton, who clearly came from a different social class than I did. Later, even though both Maurice and I could have stayed at our university for postgraduate studies, I insisted on applying to a prestigious school just across town. It was all or nothing. During that period, I was so stressed that my face broke out in acne, but I finally succeeded in getting admitted. As it turned out, Maurice was even more chuffed than I was when he saw my acceptance letter. He would tell everyone, "My girlfriend is a genius." It was only after this that our relationship gradually became accepted by his family. Once we decided to mend the rifts in our relationship, there was no turning back. I thought I had the situation under control, but Maurice caught me off guard with just one sentence. "I've already told Mr. Ingoldsby that Elfrida is staying at my place. They're quite comfortable with it." My smile froze on my face. Was this really something the Ingoldsby family knew about and tacitly approved? I'd been so naive. Elfrida Ingoldsby staying at a male friend's house might not be acceptable, but if that person was Maurice Quinton, it was apparently fine. I quickly adjusted my expression to one of sudden realization. "Why didn't you say so earlier?" "I've been worrying for nothing." Maurice truly believed the storm had passed. He came over and put his arm around me. "Darling, you're the best, always thinking of me." I really couldn't refuse. "You know, Mr. Ingoldsby has always treated me like his own son. I can't just ignore Elfrida." I let Maurice fuss over me, but I only felt irritated. However, I shouldn't let my emotions cloud my judgment. There are always more solutions than problems. If Elfrida's parents didn't mind her staying at Maurice's flat, then surely Maurice's parents would have something to say about it. After all, they should be concerned about Maurice's reputation. I found an opportunity to speak with Mrs. Quinton. "Did you know Elfrida recently went through a breakup?" Aunt Edith was indeed curious. "What happened?" I deliberately mentioned the sleepover. Elfrida had been drinking and ended up sleeping at Maurice's flat in Chelsea Square for a night. Maurice didn't even tell his family. "I'm quite worried about her safety." Mrs. Quinton's hand paused as she was peeling grapes. For a moment, I thought she might say something reasonable, but she quickly pretended not to understand. Those two have always been like that, covering for each other since they were little. If one of them did something naughty, the other would protect them. Mrs. Quinton went on and on, talking about amusing incidents from their childhood for a full 10 minutes before stopping. My heart sank bit by bit. In her mind, Maurice and Elfrida, even in their 20s, were still children. The bond they shared since childhood and the decades-long friendship between the two families clearly outweighed my few years as a potential daughter-in-law. I feared that if I asked Maurice and Elfrida to keep their distance, she might even think I was meddling. I was truly starting to tire of this situation. After 3 days of worrying, I finally came up with a solution. If I couldn't stop Elfrida from seeking out Maurice, then I could distance Maurice from Elfrida. Both Maurice and I were interested in pursuing research careers. If we applied to universities abroad, we could naturally separate ourselves from Elfrida. Before Elfrida had inserted herself into our lives, I had already discussed this idea with Maurice, and he had agreed. With my mind made up, I threw myself into data analysis and article writing, determined to polish my CV and secure a full scholarship to cover my living expenses. I practically lived in the lab, only taking 5-minute breaks to check social media on my phone. Elfrida's personality meant she loved to share, and I knew all her social media accounts. On her main account, she portrayed the image of a confident, sunny, and down-to-earth rich girl. But she also had a secondary account, where she alternated between being dramatic and artistic. As I gritted my teeth and pushed myself to churn out articles, Elfrida's main account posted photos of her hanging out with Maurice and their friends. 5 or 6 friends with their arms around each other, and undoubtedly, Elfrida was closest to Maurice. Something sharp pierced my heart. All along, I had been convinced that Elfrida wasn't really interested in Maurice. Her previous boyfriends, flaunted on her secondary account, were without exception party animals who knew how to have fun, completely different from the science and engineering type like Maurice. But what if I had guessed wrong? Overthinking made my head throb. As I went downstairs to collect my takeaway, perhaps due to days of exhaustion and low blood sugar, my foot slipped, and I tumbled down the stairs. It was quite a nasty fall. I twisted my ankle and hit my forehead, which started bleeding. I was in a complete mess. It was Sunday evening, and the teaching building was empty. Despite the commotion I caused, no one came to check. I struggled to sit up and opened my phone to see who could help me. I clicked on Maurice's WhatsApp avatar. Our last voice message exchange was, "It's Elfrida's birthday today, we're going out for karaoke. I'll call you when I get back to the dorm later." "All right, don't drink too much." Maurice was with Elfrida. He was celebrating her birthday with her. The pain affected my thinking, and after half a minute of hesitation, I still couldn't make the most advantageous decision. When I opened my eyes again, a pair of shoes appeared in my line of sight. Pure white trainers, spotlessly clean. The owner of the shoes slowly crouched down, his eyes level with mine. It was Kenneth. "Rebecca, if your boyfriend can't come because he's helping someone celebrate their birthday, I can take you to the hospital." He had heard everything? I felt a bit embarrassed and tried to explain, "No need to trouble you, I can go to the hospital myself." Kenneth pinned me in place with just one sentence. "There's something wrong between you two." His tone was indifferent, and I couldn't judge his intentions. "However, I'm not particularly interested." He extended his hand to me. "Get up, I'll take you to the hospital. It'll be quicker, and aren't you racing against time to publish articles? The time you waste now will have to be made up for later." I hesitated for 3 seconds before placing my hand in Kenneth's palm. I thought Kenneth would help me up, but after looking at the wound on my face, he picked me up without a word. My head was forced against his chest, and I could feel his slightly heavy heartbeat, each beat strong and steady. Who would have thought that he, looking so slim, had the strength for a Princess Carrie? "Thank you." "No need." Kenneth was indeed quick. In less than an hour, my sprained ankle was treated, and the doctor prescribed some oral glucose. The examination results showed no major issues. It was quite late, but Kenneth showed no signs of fatigue. As he meticulously sorted my hospital documents by size, he said, "You can call him to pick you up now." "What?" "Call your boyfriend to take you home. When he arrives after you've already had your injuries treated." Seeing such a considerate girlfriend should double his guilt, that's what you're thinking, right? "Don't worry, I won't tell. Consider it my thanks for introducing me to your supervisor." Maybe my brain was really slow, but it took me a while to understand that Kenneth had seen through my intentions from the start. I had been racking my brains to set a trap for Maurice, but this boy in front of me had guessed the whole situation with just a few words. With someone of the same kind, there's no need for many words. I smiled. Since you think that way, I won't stand on ceremony with you. It was past midnight when Maurice's call came as expected. On the phone, he clearly sounded like he was having a good time. I've just finished, but Elfrida says she wants to go. I interrupted at the right moment. Have you been drinking? If you have, then forget it. Rebecca, what's wrong? I coughed lightly, making my voice even hoarser. I accidentally fell and just finished at A&E. If you've been drinking and can't drive, I'll just take a taxi back to university. Morris's voice immediately became serious. Why didn't you tell me? I should have been there with you. Don't move, I'm coming over now. I hung up the phone, and Kenneth lazily stood up. I'll be off then. Good night, Rebecca. I thanked him again. Half an hour later, Maurice appeared at the door. His concern and distress were genuine. That's the kind of person he is, full of emotion and soft-hearted. Maurice first carefully examined my medical records, then gently supported me as we moved towards the exit. You should have told me you were hurt. Rebecca, when you're this considerate, it breaks my heart. I shook my head with a smile. I know how to prioritize. I just fell, but it's Elfrida's birthday, which only happens once a year. Besides, all your friends were there, how could you not go? Morris's arm muscles tensed, and he stopped, saying with dissatisfaction, but you've only fallen like this once in 20 years. All right, I get it, you talk too much. No, Rebecca, I need to make this clear to you. Elfrida is important, but she will never be more important than you. From now on, you must call me whenever anything happens, understand? Maurice continued to ramble on about something, but I was too tired to listen. My gaze fell on the boy standing at the entrance of the clinic. The streetlight was harsh, falling on him, outlining his cold, hard features. Kenneth lowered his head slightly, tossing his cigarette into the bin, then looked up at me. His eyes were distant, as if watching an outsider's performance. I nodded slightly to him. Kenneth gave me a victory sign, then turned and disappeared into the vast night. Because of my fall, Maurice became incredibly attentive, almost spending every day with me, finding countless ways to cheer me up. If I hadn't gently persuaded him, I'm sure he wouldn't have even wanted to go home on weekends. But my intentions didn't stop there. Taking advantage of this opportunity, I made appointments with various other departments, such as for sleep issues and digestive problems. I had all sorts of minor ailments checked. The doctor spent ages explaining how staying up late, irregular eating habits, and overthinking can lead to various health problems. Young lady, don't push yourself too hard just because you're young. You need to take good care of your health. And boyfriend, you need to keep a closer eye on her. After getting the prescriptions, Maurice was visibly worried. He carefully chose his words as he advised me, Rebecca, I know you're a very hardworking girl. But I want to say, you really don't need to push yourself so hard. You can take a break, you know. I'm always here behind you. As a grown man, I'll definitely take good care of you. I was stunned and couldn't speak for a while. Maurice thought I was angry and quickly tried to comfort me. I'm not saying you shouldn't be diligent and serious. I mean, you have me, you can rely on me without worry. I shook my head and said earnestly, it's precisely because your family is so well off that I'm working this hard. Rebecca? Do you think I don't feel tired? Do you think I don't need rest? But I don't dare. Because I lack confidence. For all these years, I had never shown too many negative emotions in front of Maurice. But this time, I honestly told him how many times I had felt distressed over the years. The first time we went on holiday, we spent over £500, and I insisted on splitting the bill. On the return journey, my phone happened to break, adding an extra expense. I ate instant noodles for 2 weeks until I received my part-time job wages. It wasn't until I got into graduate school that I finally mustered the courage to visit Maurice's parents. I'm just that sensitive and insecure. No matter how carefree I may appear on the outside, I'm always anxious inside. When someone usually so strong shows vulnerability, it can be particularly shocking, just as I had anticipated. Maurice's eyes turned red. Rebecca, don't be like this. You're already so excellent. I've never thought you weren't good enough for me. From now on, I'll love you even more than before, to make you more confident, okay? I believe he was telling the truth. There's a sincere and honest side to Morris's personality. When he trusts someone, he opens up completely, without any reservations. I broke into a smile through my tears and tapped his nose with my finger. Silly, you're already so good to me. How much more can you love me? Maurice didn't respond to my playful gesture. There was an urgent yet determined light in his eyes. I could vaguely guess what he was thinking, and this was the result of my careful guidance. We had been dating for 5 years. Moving to the next stage seemed like a natural progression. In fact, if it weren't for Elfrida's interference, I wouldn't have tried so hard to seek promises from Maurice's own mouth. Over the next few days, Maurice was constantly on his phone, secretively chatting with friends. Occasionally, when I picked up his phone, I pretended not to notice the message notification, "Your romantic setup has been shipped." The weather had already cooled down. On a certain autumn day, it was my 24th birthday. Maurice's actions were likely planned for this day. I pretended to think Maurice had invited me to a restaurant just to celebrate my birthday. But when I arrived at the restaurant as agreed and saw the decorations, I still couldn't help but burst into tears. Maurice had invited more than a dozen of our mutual friends to witness the event. He was dressed in an impeccable suit and had even styled his hair for the occasion. Kneeling on one knee, he opened the velvet box in his hand and, under everyone's gaze, proposed to me. "Rebecca, will you marry me?" In the center of the restaurant, a projection cycled through photos of us from all these years. Us in classes together, competing in contests, participating in clubs, traveling together. My makeup skills had improved over time, and Maurice's demeanor had become increasingly gentlemanly. The happiness captured in these photos would still be touching even years later. I thought I wasn't one to show my emotions, I thought I could control my feelings, but when I heard those words, I still broke down in tears. I wiped the tears from my face, yes. This moment was captured by our friends and posted on their social media platforms. Everyone was laughing and offering congratulations. The laughter seemed like endless, undulating waves, making me feel dizzy. Maurice leaned in close to me and lowered his voice, "We'll treat them to lunch, and then in the afternoon we'll go to the register office. I've already made an appointment." I was about to tease him for being impatient when Maurice's phone rang. He picked it up, glanced at it, and his expression suddenly turned serious. He gestured to me and walked to a quiet corner to make a call. I quietly moved closer and could only hear the anxious voice of Maurice's mother. "Come quickly, Elfrida's had an accident. She's in the hospital." Maurice sounded a bit exasperated. "Mom, I can't leave right now. I have something important." "What nonsense are you talking about? You've been hiding your proposal to Rebecca from us. And Elfrida was rushing to help you celebrate when she got hit by a car. You should come and see her, it's only right." "Mom, can't I come later? Rebecca and we've been friends with the Ingoldsbys for decades. Don't you remember how good Uncle Percival was to you when you were little?" "Child, are you trying to give me a heart attack?" Maurice gave a bitter laugh. All right, don't worry. I'll come right away." He hung up the phone but seemed to be still struggling internally, not turning back to me. Seeing Maurice's troubled expression, I clasped my hands together, the diamond newly placed on my ring finger digging painfully into my skin. Elfrida Ingoldsby, always Elfrida Ingoldsby. Why did this girl always have to appear in my world? Her getting injured at this crucial moment, was it really just a coincidence? But I couldn't stop him. Maurice was kind-hearted and soft. He could fall into my trap, but he would also inevitably care for others. Even at his own proposal, he couldn't resist his mother's orders, leaving me to go check on his childhood friend. As for leaving me alone to deal with all these friends here, he was probably troubled by that too. But should I be the one to bear the consequences of his dilemma? I retreated to the ladies' room to collect myself. I didn't want to endlessly tangle with Maurice's childhood friend. Of course, I could continue to use tactics to control Maurice, but where would that lead? And even if I won against Elfrida, what then? Perhaps it was time to let go completely. But now was not the time for a breakup. After years of dating, Maurice and I shared too many social circles. Even if we were to break up, I needed to design an ending that would leave everyone with no grounds to criticize me. 5 minutes later, I walked out with a calm expression and asked Maurice if something had happened. After he explained that Elfrida was injured while rushing to celebrate with us, I didn't question, criticize, or doubt him. Instead, I suggested without any resentment, you should go see Elfrida quickly. I'll take care of things here. You need to consider the long friendship between your families. You've invited so many friends, we need to be considerate of them too. So you go, I'll entertain them. If Maurice had changed his mind at this point, I might have reconsidered my earlier thoughts. But he clearly hadn't noticed my emotions and instead looked relieved. All right, Rebecca, you're so understanding. I'll go to the hospital and come back as soon as I can. He really left. I watched him leave, as if saying goodbye to the past 5 years of my life. I used all my social skills to take care of everyone perfectly. Not only did I take photos myself, but I also had others take photos of me, and after that, I reminded everyone to post on Facebook. The more hurt I felt inside, the more beautifully I smiled. After seeing off all the guests, I decided to go to the hospital. After all, Elfrida was injured, and I should at least go see her. I asked the waiter to pack up a few of the roses used for decoration. These roses were the same as the ones we saw in the shopping center that time. Since Elfrida liked them, I'd give her a bouquet. It was already evening when I rushed to the hospital. I easily found Elfrida in Goldsby's ward. As I had guessed, her injuries weren't severe, at least from my perspective, just a scraped knee. But there must have been a reason for her to be lying in a VIP hospital room. I didn't question it, simply placing the bouquet I'd brought beside Elfrida's bed. She lay on the bed with her eyes closed, seemingly asleep. So I greeted her parents who were keeping vigil. They had an air similar to Morris's parents, with that typical condescending politeness of elders. But perhaps it was just my imagination, both their expressions seemed a bit off. Mr. Ingoldsby seemed to want to say something but held back, while Mrs. Ingoldsby sighed deeply and took my hand. Rebecca, isn't it? Our Elfrida was thoughtless this time, I'll have a word with her. This child, we've spoiled her, it's our fault as parents. Mr. Ingoldsby gently patted Mrs. Ingoldsby's arm. What are you saying? The child is lying in a hospital bed, can't whatever you want to say wait until she's better? Mrs. Ingoldsby glared at him, oh Percival, you just keep indulging her. Sooner or later, but she trailed off, mindful of my presence. There was something cryptic in their words, I needed to get to the bottom of it. I left the ward, trying to find Maurice. As luck would have it, after searching for a short while, I saw Maurice's silhouette in the stairwell on the top floor. Standing next to him, holding his arm, was Maurice's mother. She was earnestly advising him, Rebecca is lovely, I've never said otherwise. But getting engaged is such a big decision, you should have discussed it with the family. Maurice replied impatiently, I've been with Becca for 5 years, shouldn't I make a commitment to her? You should, but with Elfrida in this state, shouldn't you reconsider before deciding? We can't let Elfrida down. Maurice clenched his fists, furious, don't start. Elfrida is lying, I've known her since childhood. Don't you think I can tell? She's spouting nothing but lies, and you actually believe her? How could she possibly like me? My heart jolted. Elfrida actually had feelings for Maurice? The information conveyed in these few sentences was truly overwhelming. If I hadn't already decided to give up on this relationship, I would likely have been devastated beyond measure. I had speculated countless times before about Elfrida's presence between us, whether I was being overly sensitive or if she had ulterior motives. Now that the answer was revealed, I actually felt like laughing. Over 20 years of childhood friendship couldn't turn into romance. Elfrida must think I'm the interloper. Morris's mother continued to plead. If you don't believe it, fine, but we still need to give the Ingoldsbys an explanation. You're still young, and haven't even graduated yet, there's no rush. Don't get the marriage license yet, wait until Elfrida recovers and then we'll see. Maurice, seemingly at a loss for how to deal with his mother's persistence, turned and kicked the stainless steel railing of the stairwell hard. The loud noise echoed in the empty stairwell. His mother flinched, suddenly falling silent. She covered her face, crouched down, and began to sob. I didn't want to watch this farce any longer. I don't remember how I left the hospital and returned to university. My phone battery was down to its last bar. My WhatsApp had exploded today, with everyone sending congratulations, wishing the lovers a happy ending. How ironic. I was indeed too naive. Morris's parents had never approved of me. They simply didn't want their son to be upset, so they never objected. Dating was fine. Marriage, absolutely not. I restrained myself and bought 3 cans of beer, sitting in the stadium stands, drinking in silence. But by 11:30, Maurice hadn't contacted me, not even a WhatsApp message. So I lazily typed out a message while holding a beer can between my teeth. Went to the hospital to see Elfrida tonight, but didn't see you. I'm heading back to the dorm to rest. Let me know when you're settled. Love you. A breakup was inevitable now. The alcohol numbed my senses, and I slept in for the first time in ages. When I woke up, I was in a surprisingly good mood. I decided to visit Maurice Quinton and check on Elfrida in Goldsby while I was at it. When I asked if anything had happened at the hospital, Morris's eyes betrayed a hint of unease. Nothing happened. Elfrida was just careless and didn't look when crossing the road. She'll be out of hospital in a few days. Maurice was never good at lying. This attempt at feigned composure was the best he could muster. He could have many reasons for concealing the truth from me. Perhaps he was worried about causing me distress, or maybe he feared I would blame Elfrida. Whatever the reason, his inability to be frank with me spoke volumes about his inner turmoil. I casually remarked, I see. Well, that's a relief. But about our marriage registration? Morris's body tensed. I quickly continued, I've been thinking, and perhaps we should wait until after graduation. Marriage is a big step, after all. Our parents should meet again to discuss it properly. Maurice said nothing, simply pulling me into an embrace. Rebecca, I won't let you down. You have to trust me. Trust him? I had trusted him many times before. I had given him far too many chances, but sadly, he had never seized them. Once, I believed Maurice was my soulmate. He was sincere, passionate, gracious in his interactions, respectful to the elderly, and protective of women. We shared academic pursuits and would laugh at the same obscure moments in films that left others baffled. But I had overlooked the fact that he was also an obedient and filial good child. I said, Elfrida's accident really frightened me. We're both only children. If something were to happen, our families would be devastated. Why don't we stay here for our doctorates instead of going abroad? Maurice was overjoyed and nodded in agreement. He had never been keen on moving so far from home, so this suited him perfectly. Maurice withdrew his application materials, but I didn't withdraw mine. In fact, I applied to several more universities. As I said, I'm a gambler. I'm betting that without love, my luck will shift to my studies. I'm betting that fortune will smile upon me, granting me impeccable experimental data and satisfying publications. Lastly, I'm betting that since Maurice doesn't dare to confess about Elfrida's declaration, I can turn the tables and catch him off guard. I pretended nothing had happened and increased the frequency of my visits to the Quinton household. After all, as the official girlfriend and fiancée, I could visit Morris's home whenever I pleased. With my frequent visits and gifts of fruit, even the doorman and the cleaners knew I was the Quintons' future daughter-in-law. Once, I overheard the cleaning lady in the neighborhood complimenting me to Mrs. Quinton, praising my thoughtfulness and grace. I couldn't see Mrs. Quinton's expression clearly, but I imagined it was one of vexation rather than pleasure. I even suggested visiting the Ingoldsbys next door. Elfrida was injured while helping celebrate my achievement. Of course I should visit her. Naturally, Elfrida claimed to have a headache and refused to see me. Mrs. Ingoldsby received me, and we chatted about amusing incidents at university, never lacking for topics. As we talked, I delightedly discovered that both she and her husband had one foot in academia, and were even alumni from the same year as my supervisor. Eagerly, I showed her the WhatsApp conversation between my supervisor and me. Mrs. Ingoldsby, this is a young man my supervisor asked me to introduce to someone. Don't you think he and Elfrida would make a handsome couple? If you agree, shall I introduce them? The young man's CV and photo were indeed real. I had genuinely taken on this task. However, the purpose was certainly not to find a boyfriend for Elfrida Ingoldsby. Rather, it was to use this opportunity to showcase my social circle to the Ingoldsby family. Mrs. Ingoldsby's understanding of me likely came mostly from Mrs. Quinton's accounts. But since Mrs. Quinton was a businesswoman, I felt it unwise to discuss many academic matters with her, lest she find it boring. Therefore, I feared the Ingoldsby family's impression of me might still be that of a small-town student who got into university through sheer studying, with no money to speak of. I calmly pulled up a few more pictures on my phone, casually mentioning them. Look, this is a photo of me with my professor and another student at an academic conference. My professor published a paper, and I helped with some of the data. I heard he once held a temporary position at your workplace. You must know him, I imagine? Finally, I showed a photo of myself, Maurice, and several other professors. It was taken by friends when I won an award in a competition. In the sunlight, everyone was smiling broadly. Maurice had his arm around my shoulders, standing in the center. Maurice and I are both very fortunate to have found excellent mentors, who happen to be friends. Both professors want to be our wedding officiants someday. Isn't that interesting? The more I spoke, the more serious Mrs. Ingoldsby's expression became. I admit, I was taking a gamble. I was betting that Mrs. Ingoldsby wouldn't dare let her daughter snatch a boyfriend from a poor student with no connections. But if this poor student happened to be the protege of her former classmate or colleague, she would have to think twice. As it turned out, my gamble paid off. 2 days later, when I spoke to Maurice about Elfrida again, he said, "She's gone abroad. Left first, then she'll choose a school slowly." Mrs. Ingoldsby went with her. Elfrida had been drifting aimlessly in the country for a year, unable to decide her future path, and after just one visit from me, she suddenly knew what to do. I averted my gaze, pretending not to notice Morris's thoughtful expression. Elfrida Ingoldsby's decision to study abroad clearly dealt a blow to Morris's mother. Or perhaps Mrs. Ingoldsby had said something to her, and she might have guessed that this matter had something to do with me. So the next time I visited, she made it clear that I shouldn't come often. In fact, she simply wanted to separate Maurice and me. It didn't matter, because I had already received my first job offer, and I would receive more in the future. I had already paved the way for myself. The reason I maintained the status quo was because I wanted to leave cleanly and gracefully. At this time, I noticed that Maurice had lost weight, so I volunteered to make him some nourishing soup. There were no cooking facilities in the dormitory, so we went to Morris's marital home in Chelsea Square. Maurice had given me the keys to the marital home before, but I rarely used them. The property prices here were expensive, and I was afraid Mrs. Quinton would think I was after their money. But now, there was nothing to avoid. I wanted them to think my foxtail was showing. I frequently went in and out of Chelsea Square, cooking and bringing food to Maurice. Of course, his supervisor and classmates also got their share. Some of Morris's parents' friends lived in the same neighborhood. When they occasionally saw me carrying thermal food containers, they would stop for a chat and naturally praise my domesticity. These words would always reach Morris's parents' ears. To gossip a bit more, these friends might even ask Mr. and Mrs. Quinton when their son was getting married, so they could prepare wedding gifts. I knew the time was probably right. On Morris's 24th birthday, I asked everyone in the lab to help him celebrate. The location was, once again, our marital home. I took photos of the decorated living room, the cake I made, and the dishes I prepared. I gathered 9 pictures, edited them carefully, and posted them on Facebook. The caption read, "For the rest of our lives, reserved for each other." I rarely showed off our relationship before, because I always felt that true happiness didn't need to be displayed to the public. But this time, I broke my own rule and flaunted our love. Mrs. Quinton was on my WhatsApp. She would see it. I guessed she would find a way to intervene. And indeed, she did. When we were celebrating until 9:30 in the evening, Mrs. Quinton came over. Morris's classmates all greeted her, but with an elder present, no one wanted to stay long, and soon they all said they had to leave. I said, "Mrs. Quinton isn't feeling well, she should go home and rest early. I'll clean up the living room and kitchen." But Mrs. Quinton smiled and pushed me towards the door. "Rebecca, you're not officially part of the family yet, I can't let you do the work. You should go back to university with your classmates." I had already guessed Mrs. Quinton's purpose in coming over. She didn't want me to stay overnight in this house. This house, where Maurice could live with Elfrida, but I couldn't stay with him. However, halfway out, I realized I had forgotten my phone, so I had to ask 2 classmates to return with me. I had tampered with the front door a bit, so it wasn't fully closed. Through the half-open door, Mrs. Quinton's angry voice came through in fragments. Not even married yet, and already inviting friends over like this. Who knows what will happen after you're married? What did Mummy tell you? Mummy has never misjudged anyone in her life. That Rebecca girl is scheming and cunning. She's just after our house and money. You need to open your eyes and not be fooled by Rebecca again. My heart, which had been in suspense, finally settled. The result was even more perfect than I had imagined. I stood there like a wooden statue, and the 2 classmates beside me exchanged glances, both coming over to pull me away worriedly. Rebecca, it seems Mrs. Quinton is in a bad mood. Shall we go back first? The 2 people who came back with me, one was openly and secretly competing with Maurice for a scholarship. The other was naturally fond of gossip, knowing all the rumors in the department. I believed they would tell everything they had seen and heard tonight to everyone who should know. I gave them a helpless smile, then gently knocked on the door and calmly pushed it open. The mother and son inside both froze. I remained calm as ever. Sorry to disturb you, I forgot my phone. Taking my phone out from the sofa cushions, I turned to look at Maurice. He was both embarrassed and ashamed, not even daring to look at me. I smiled at him, but a tear precisely slid down my cheek. The engagement ring I had been holding in my palm dropped to the floor with a clatter, rolling a few times before stopping at Maurice's feet. Also, let's break up. As I expected, the 2 girls who witnessed the entire breakup spread the story. The news of Maurice Quinton's proposal to me and our subsequent split became quite public. The reason for our breakup was particularly infuriating to many, and I received numerous WhatsApp messages from people consoling me and cursing Maurice. I didn't reply to any of the messages. If I wanted to be the kind girl who wishes her ex well even after a breakup, I shouldn't say much. Maurice's mother wasn't wrong, I am indeed calculating and cunning. It's just a pity that at the beginning, I also offered my heart unreservedly to the person I loved. It was he who shattered it with his own hands. A few days later, having played the part of the heartbroken girl long enough, I stopped moping in the dormitory and occasionally went out to conduct experiments. Maurice stood outside the dormitory entrance, rain or shine. He looked rather pitiful. Of course, he had sent me countless text messages and made numerous phone calls. Overwhelmed by his persistence, I started going out with companions. My roommates were even more agitated than I was. When they got fed up with Maurice's pestering, they would shout at him, "How is our Rebecca not good enough for you to be insulted by your family? You heartless bastard. Go spend your life with your mum then." At times like these, Maurice was truly left speechless. He couldn't deny the hurtful words his mother had said. Of course, there were even more heart-wrenching moments. Barnaby Fairfax also learned about my breakup with Maurice, so he came to confess his feelings for me with roses. Maurice was standing at the bottom of the dormitory building, watching me come out and accept Barnaby's flowers. He seemed to want to intervene, but ultimately did nothing. I left with Barnaby under Maurice's gaze. Barnaby couldn't possibly be sincere in his confession, he was just stirring up drama. I treated him to a meal. During the dinner, I kindly informed him that I was planning to go abroad to focus on my studies and heal my emotional wounds. Barnaby was a quick-witted fellow. Understanding my rejection, he immediately started cursing. Maurice is truly a piece of work. Just because his family has some money, he treats everyone like they're thieves. Although I didn't consider Barnaby a reliable person, I still smiled and thanked him. He's in a difficult position too. Don't be too hard on him. Barnaby clicked his tongue. Even after all this, you're still defending him? He didn't cherish such a wonderful girlfriend. That bloke must be blind. It was only now that I gradually began to feel the heartache. I didn't not love Maurice. It's just that I always loved myself a little bit more. As graduation approached, more and more people were hosting farewell dinners. I initially declined all invitations, only agreeing to attend after confirming Maurice wouldn't be present. But inevitably, I ran into him once. I turned to leave immediately, but a friend chased after me. They were about to persuade me when they saw my tears welling up and froze. Rebecca, I'm sorry. He just wanted to reconcile with you. I wiped away my tears, pretending not to see Maurice hiding in the shadows. He's such a good person, it's me who's not good enough for him. He deserves a better girl. That childhood friend of his, she's much more suitable for him. I'm not sure which word triggered Maurice, but he suddenly rushed over and grabbed my shoulders. Becky, you know everything, don't you? I'm a fool, I should have told you earlier. Elfrida Ingoldsby is full of lies, don't believe a word she says. Startled, I stepped back, trying to break free. Maurice became increasingly agitated, I don't like her at all. What my parents think is their business. Why can't you think about me? It was the busiest time of day, and we were causing quite a scene. Everyone turned to look at us curiously. I covered my eyes, appearing to cry even more heartbrokenly. How else am I supposed to think about you? Your parents look down on my family for being poor. Does that mean I'm poor in spirit too? Should I endure their contempt just to marry you? Maurice, instead of coming here to interrogate me, why don't you go convince your parents to let go of their prejudices? Because you don't dare, because you're a coward, because you simply don't love me enough. The crowd of onlookers grew larger, and I could already spot a few underclassmen among them. Some were even recording with their phones. Our mutual friends tried to separate Maurice and me, while a few young men from the street joined in to help. Somehow, in the chaos, Maurice swung his fist, connecting with someone's chin. The person cried out and fell to the ground. The group of lads immediately restrained Maurice, calling over nearby security guards and the police. The person who had been hit stumbled to his feet, looking oddly familiar. Kenneth Holbrook, clutching his bleeding lip, approached me with a grimace. Lucky coincidence today. I thought I'd lend a hand for once, he said through gritted teeth. Don't worry, I'll make sure he doesn't get off easy. The altercation escalated, and 5 or 6 people were taken to give statements. The street was lined with CCTV cameras, and from the footage, it was clear that Maurice had initiated the violence, bearing the most responsibility. Kenneth, the injured party, refused mediation, insisting that Maurice face punishment. With graduation approaching, it was better to have fewer complications. Maurice's parents quickly arrived, apologizing profusely and trying to smooth things over. They even appealed to me. Rebecca, dear, couldn't you tell the officer that this was just a lover's quarrel? Isn't that normal? I showed them my bruised elbow. Mr. and Mrs. Quinton, Maurice and I broke up months ago. He's been harassing me since, and I haven't pressed charges out of respect for you both. If you're going to twist the facts, I won't hesitate to tell the officer that Maurice has been stalking me. This attack might even be premeditated. Their faces paled, but they couldn't react openly in public. Mr. Quinton tried to lead his wife away, but she seemed unable to let it go, muttering under her breath. What did I tell you? This girl was never good enough for our family. I'd always been docile and obedient, but this time I couldn't hold back. I calmly met Mrs. Quinton's eyes. You've got it wrong, Mrs. Quinton. It's Maurice who isn't good enough for my family. At this, even the usually affable Mr. Quinton's expression changed. Young lady, one should be gracious. We've always treated you well. I returned his look with a smile. Perhaps you could clarify, Mr. Quinton. How exactly have you treated me well? Have I ever spent your money? Before Mr. Quinton could respond, his wife burst out angrily, You've spent Maurice's money, and where do you think that comes from? We bought a flat for our son, and you could just move in without a care. You even persuaded Maurice to pursue a PhD abroad with you. Rebecca, could your family afford that? You'd be relying on us. This time, I genuinely laughed. I pulled out a small notebook from my bag, opened it, and thrust it into her hands, enunciating each word clearly. This is a record of all expenses since Maurice and I started dating. For years, we've split everything equally, always going Dutch, fair and square. As for your house, I've never spent a single night there. And about how I can afford to study abroad. I shifted my gaze behind them. Maurice, your mother might not know, but you do, don't you? Maurice stood silently at a distance, his eyes filled with pain. As straightforward and earnest as he was, he'd probably never imagined his parents would be so aggressive. He spoke hoarsely. Rebecca wins national scholarships every year, gets stipends for projects, and occasionally takes on freelance work and part-time jobs. Her grades are excellent, and she'll have scholarships for her PhD too. Mom, I've told you so many times, Rebecca isn't after our money. Why won't you believe me? His mother, both embarrassed and angry, gritted her teeth. Son, you've truly been bewitched by this vixen. She might say all the right things now, but in the future. Maurice suddenly started laughing. He wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes while laughing. Mom, stop. There is no future between us anymore. The words seemed to drain all his energy. Maurice's shoulders slumped, his whole demeanor deflated and dejected. He slowly turned and walked towards the exit, step by step. Watching his retreating figure, I felt nothing but desolation. I spoke softly, my voice tinged with sadness. I tried my best. You were the one who gave up first. This time, I believed Maurice truly understood that there was no longer any possibility between us. Maurice and my relationship had finally been thoroughly, irrevocably destroyed at the hands of his parents. Maurice's parents had pulled quite a few strings, even contacting Kenneth's parents' friends. As a result, Kenneth decided to back down and agreed to mediation. Once the matter was settled, Kenneth asked, "Shall we grab a bite to eat?" I declined with a smile, "No, thanks. I don't want to take their money." Kenneth insisted, "They've given it to me, so it's my money now." I laughed and gently poked his swollen chin and lips. "Come off it, with that mouth of yours, you're in no state to eat. Go home and rest." With the university issues resolved, I took leave to visit my hometown. To my surprise, my parents had sold their house in the small town and were planning to move back to the countryside. We're both retired now. It'll be nice to grow our own vegetables, they said. We sold it for £30,000, Rebecca. This money is for your dowry. I hadn't told them about my breakup with Maurice yet. But now, it was time to come clean. My parents didn't have much education or understand many grand theories, but they knew that when marrying off a daughter, you give her the best dowry you can. Fighting back tears, I hugged my parents. Mom, Dad, don't worry. I won't let anyone look down on our family. We know you won't. Finally, I graduated successfully. The recommendation letter from my supervisor played a crucial role. I was accepted into another top university for my PhD, receiving the highest scholarship awarded in the past 5 years. I moved from one campus to another. Although my living expenses were covered, studying abroad was incredibly challenging. It took me a full 6 months to overcome the language barrier, and another 6 months to gradually find my place in the laboratory. Occasionally, to lift my spirits, I would check Elfrida's social media accounts. Elfrida had chosen the easiest business course. Her family cut off her credit card, forcing her to apologize to her parents before receiving living expenses again. Later, she returned to England, preparing to get married. The groom wasn't Maurice. I asked Kenneth to help me by giving a wedding gift and personally delivering it to Elfrida's wedding. How much should I give? He asked. £2,250, I replied. Kenneth hadn't gotten into graduate school and decided not to try again. Instead, he went into event planning. He was good at understanding people's feelings and was doing quite well. We would chat occasionally. He was surprised. Why that specific amount? It was the price of the bracelet Elfrida had given me. When I went abroad to study, I didn't bring much luggage. Apart from essential clothing, I only brought that bracelet. Whenever I felt my future looked bleak and unbearable, I would take it out and examine it for a moment. It commemorated a love that began with sincerity but ended due to materialism. More importantly, it reminded me that I was a child without an umbrella, needing to run harder to avoid getting soaked. However, I don't like owing people, so I wanted to repay Elfrida. It would be as if I had bought it from her. After attending the wedding, Kenneth came back to complain to me. The groom is quite handsome, seems to be some sort of social media influencer. Her parents didn't look too happy though, they had sour faces the whole time. She seems to be pregnant already, that might be why her parents aren't pleased. I smirked. All right, I asked you to deliver a gift, not to come back with so much gossip. I thought that would be the end of it, but to my surprise, not long after, I received a call from Elfrida. After all, our social circles weren't that large, and she only needed to ask around to contact me. She politely thanked me for the wedding gift. After a few years, her voice sounded calmer and more mature. I said, "It's nothing. When we first met, you gave me a gift, and I was quite touched." She suddenly became tongue-tied. Perhaps it was due to pregnancy mood swings, but she suddenly burst into tears. "Actually, I wanted to say I'm sorry. I was too impulsive back then, I hurt Maurice, and I hurt you even more. I'm sorry, Rebecca." This apology sounded rather ridiculous. So I couldn't help but laugh, though I remained polite. It's been so many years, there's no need to bring it up again. Elfrida sniffled and continued crying. "No, I truly feel I've wronged you both. Maurice hasn't been doing well these past few years. He dropped out of his PhD program halfway through and refuses to find a job. He helps out at his mother's company, but all he does is attend social events and play video games. He's almost 30 and still hasn't found a partner. Aunt Edith has introduced him to many girls, but he refuses to meet any of them. We all say, he's waiting for you. I've asked around, and you haven't dated anyone either. So if possible, could I ask you to reconsider him?" I listened to her rambling without saying a word. Was it strange that Maurice remembered me? We were each other's first love, meeting in the most passionate years of our lives, and we accompanied each other through 5 years of our best times. Although we didn't end up together in the end, it was enough to leave indelible memories on each other. At least, from what I knew, Maurice hadn't had any significant relationships with women all these years. However, he might not necessarily be waiting for me, he might just be heartbroken by his parents and unwilling to date. I lazily asked Elfrida, "Reconsider him? In what capacity are you asking me this? As his lifelong friend, or as a girl who once had a crush on him?" Elfrida protested. "I never liked Maurice, if that's what you're concerned about." "Then you're lying," I replied. "It wasn't intentional. Aunt Edith asked me to find a way to break you up. She always said you and Maurice weren't suitable, and if I could make you feel inferior, you would leave him. Aunt Edith didn't approve of me a few years ago, why would she approve now?" Elfrida hesitated. She still cares for Maurice deep down. Rather than watching him remain so negative, she'd rather let me have him? I couldn't help but laugh. "I'm sorry, but I have no such intention. I'm doing quite well now and don't want to revisit past unpleasantness." Elfrida sighed. "Won't you reconsider?" "Well, all right then." I had long known that it was Maurice's mother who truly disapproved of me. Elfrida was just following her wishes. This phone call was likely also somewhat at Aunt Edith's behest. But I had always had one question. As Elfrida was about to hang up, I asked one last question. "Elfrida, even if the Quinton family treated you like their own daughter, you're a girl with your own thoughts and ideas. Why were you willing to listen to them and try so hard to break Maurice and me up? Maurice truly cared about you and saw you as a friend. Why did you do this to him?" Elfrida took a sharp breath and struggled to speak. "Because I was jealous of you. I was confused." "You were jealous of me?" This was truly unexpected. Elfrida had money and looks, one could say she was heaven's favored child. Why would she be jealous of me? "Do you remember when you helped me with an assignment once? I got full marks for that assignment, and the teacher specifically sought me out to praise me as the most talented student he had ever seen. For the next 3 years, I tried hard, but I could only ever get one comment: 'What a pity, Elfrida, you're such a clever student. You can write such a perfect essay, but why won't you work hard and prepare well for exams?' That's when I knew, Rebecca, I was very jealous of you. I was jealous that you could effortlessly reach heights I could never achieve in my lifetime. So, I wanted to destroy something you had, to make you less proud. I succeeded indeed, you and Maurice didn't end up together. But I found no joy in it at all. It's hard to describe exactly how I felt. There was shock, helplessness, and more than anything, a sense of relief. I had considered many possibilities for why Elfrida had been so passive-aggressive. Perhaps she truly had a crush on Maurice. Perhaps she looked down on my ordinary family background. Perhaps she found my personality disagreeable. But I truly hadn't thought it was because she believed she wasn't as intelligent as me. So, I did have something she envied. So, that sensitive, fragile, suspicious, and insecure girl could actually be envied by others. So, without my knowing, while I was quietly envying Elfrida's body adorned with luxury goods, she was also quietly envying me. It's truly ironic. But it also suddenly felt liberating. After hanging up the phone, I took out the bracelet from the depths of my drawer and put it on for the first time. All these years, I had kept this bracelet, always carrying it with me, but never wearing it. The diamond was brilliant and bright. I admired it quietly for another minute, then took it off and put it back in its box, then pushed it back into the depths of the drawer and locked it. No matter how gorgeous or expensive, it was just a cold piece of jewelry. Apart from being beautiful, it had no use, so it wasn't suitable for me. I need to go to the lab later, and wearing jewelry while operating equipment would be very inconvenient.